Hey everybody, it is Dana and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're playing with the newly released Hero Arts, my monthly kit for August 2021. I'm going to go ahead and share the products with you today. So you're going to get this beautiful set of dies that says love and then some hands that actually form a heart. Absolutely love this set. You're also going to get this beautiful stencil. And this gives you kind of like a wave of stripes that you can actually make a rainbow out of it. You're also going to get a stamp set that has lots and lots of sentiments, also a little heart, and everything is happy and colorful. And you're also going to get this circle red rubber stamp, and I love the design on this because it's intertwining circles that focus on a flower in the center. I'm going to be watercoloring today, so I'm using Hero Arts Watercolor and Cocoa, ArtPrint Brown, and White. Now these colors here are going to give me an array of shades of brown, and I'm going to talk you through that. So now I want to first start with my watercolor paper, and this watercolor paper is a little bit larger than a normal size sheet of what I would actually use on my panel. And there's a reason why I'm doing that, because I want to test out my paint colors before I actually bring them to the project itself. So I do want to heat emboss this, so I'm using my anti-static bag, and I'm going to use my Hero Arts Embossing Ink. Now, because this is textured watercolor, I do need to make sure that I stamp this a few times. If you ever watercolored on textured paper, and this happens to be cold press, not hot press, I find if you're using a graphic that has thin lines, you might want to stamp it a few times because of the divots and the dents in the cold press paper. You might not pick up your lines correctly, like if you just stamped once. So I always recommend stamping 2 or 3 times. I'm using my little glider tool here to help me press those lines into the paper. And as at this point, I really can't see what that looks like on the paper because the paper is white and the ink is clear. Again, very fine lines on this, so I didn't want to chance it, and I went ahead and I stamped this out 3 times. So once I have that stamped down, I can pull out my paper. And even at this point on watercolor paper, it's really hard to see when you have fine lines. So make sure if you stamp it great the first time, because you can't go back and restamp. Next, I'm coming in with some Brass Hero Arts embossing powder. And I'm going to sprinkle this on here. Now I have a little tip, and I think I might have seen this on one of our creative members pages. I think it was Mindy, is to put your embossing powder on and then kind of tap it around your paper. This kind of helps it settle into the paper without having to really pour on more embossing powder. So you just see I'm kind of like shaking it to make sure I can see all of the image. I'm just kind of shaking it around the paper, and then I can go ahead and tap this off. And when I tap it off, I seem to have a better coverage without having to add any more embossing powder to this. So that's a great tip, is to add the embossing powder first, shake it around on your card panel, and then dump it off. And you find that you don't have to add any more embossing powder. So I'm going to go ahead and clean some of that up with my little dry brush. And then we can go ahead and start watercoloring. Now I am going to tape this down to my glass mat because I don't want this to warp a lot, because I will be using a lot of water with this. So if you want to keep your image from bowing too much, just take the time to tape it down to a hardboard or to your glass mat, so you just alleviate all that buckling of your paper. Now, if you're not using a lot of paper when you're doing your watercoloring, you can skip this step. It's kind of just like a habit for me now to tape down my card panels, just because it allows me to add a little bit more water to my image without getting all the buckling. All right, now since I have that thoroughly taped down, I'm going to bring in a palette. Now this palette is plastic, so it does have some staining to it, but it's still okay. I'm still going to be able to work with it. I'm going to grab my cocoa watercolor. I'm going to shake it up a little bit. And then I'm going to put different amounts of drops of this brown into each well. So the first one I did about 4, second one I did about 3, this one I'm going to do 2, that one I'm just going to do 1. So you're going to notice the one at the top is going to have more ink, so there's going to be more saturation of color. Now I'm going to come in with that ArtPrint, and I'm going to add about 3 or 4 drops to this one and 1 to that one. Again, now the variations I'm going to get with just adding that color. Nothing else. I'm going to be able to blend several shades of brown out of this. Now, the trick is how much water you add and how much ink you add to the wells. So I have a water bottle here and my little cup full of water. Now I'm going to take my paintbrush and start dropping in water. Now, the ones that I want to be lighter, I'm going to add more water to. So watch this. I'm going to slide that out the way. And now, because I did not cut down my cardstock, I have a way to test out my color. So I'm going to go first in with the one that had a lot of the brown ink. So you can see that's going to have a stronger value to it. Next, I'll come into the one that had 1 drop less ink. I'm going to get a little bit of a lighter shade. I wanted that a tad bit lighter, so I added a little bit more water. The third one, I had the 2 drops. See where I'm going here? More water you add, less ink you add to it, or watercolor you add to it, the lighter your shades are going to be. So as you can tell, I'm getting a variety of color just from the one ink or the one liquid watercolor. So I have my shades there. Now I'm going to go ahead and mix up that ArtPrint. Now this ArtPrint comes out a little bit purpley, almost like a maroon color. And I'm going to show you how you can turn that to a deeper brown. So now, since I have all of my colors, again, easily using just 2 colors, I'm going to get a wide range of browns. All right, so I'm going to slide everything over, and then we're going to go ahead and quickly start watercoloring. So this probably took me maybe 20 minutes. And I just started to add in my darker color first. Now I have one paintbrush that I usually go into the color with. And if I get to skinny parts, I pull in the second paintbrush. I kind of learned this tip from Debbie Hues. She uses 2 paintbrushes to colors with. One is the only one that goes into the paint, and the other one is the only one that goes into the water. For mine today, I'm just making sure that I keep a finer tip brush to go into those finer spaces. And also with the finer tip brush, I'm allowed to pull up some of that color. So if I get down too much color or too much water, I can use that tinier brush to kind of soak back some of that water into my brush, and then also spread that color around into the nooks and crannies. Now I did want to go one more shade lighter, so I just put a drop of the cocoa liquid watercolor onto my mat, mixed it in with tons of water, and I'm going to get that very, very pale shade of brown. So you can see just by the concentration of the liquid watercolor and the amount of water I use, I'm getting these totally different variations. Now you can do this with a lot of watercolors. Even if you don't have liquid and you have pan watercolor, you can also do that with pan. Just take some of the color out, put it onto a palette, add or delete the amount of water that you use, and you're able to get a very pretty gradient of that color. So now I'm just going in, making sure I put a second round of this color down, because the first time you watercolor, that color is going to be really, really light. So now I'm coming in and I'm putting in that ArtPrint. Now, again, I told you that this kind of comes off as a purpley kind of maroon color. I'm going to show you how to darken this up to a darker brown. So I'm using like an underwash or an undertone to get my darker browns. So first you come in with this purpley ArtPrint color, And then I'm going to add in the brown that I already have mixed on that palette to give me a darker shade of brown. So if you're limited on the amount of watercolors that you have, this is just a really great tip. So I want to get one more shade lighter of that ArtPrint. And you see, again, one drop on my mat, tons and tons of water allows me to get that third shade. Now I'm going to come back and I'm going to take that deeper strength of that brown and add it over the ArtPrint. And you see, I end up with a darker shade of brown, a shade of brown that I might not have been able to achieve just with the cocoa color. But when you add in that darker, more intense color, I can darken up to a level of brown that I might not have been able to achieve. Now I do want to go ahead and heat set back this first layer. Now some of the colors might granulate a little bit, and that's like the little speckling that you see, but that is the beauty of watercoloring. That's what I love about watercoloring, is that you're going to be able to create almost like a texture sometimes with the watercolors that you use. So now, as you can see, deepening up those colors, now I'm starting to build up that richness of these browns. Again, the first time you watercolor, it's going to be very light. Your first wash per se is going to be light. So the more color you add, you dry in between, the deeper your shades are going to become. So I'll just add in a few more rounds of this and go ahead and heat set that one more time. Now, if I went outside of the areas, I'm just going to grab that white Hero Arts ink, and I'm just going to place some of this down at the top of my mat. And this is going to allow me to kind of clean up some of those areas that I might have went outside the lines. Now, you don't have to do this. I'm just being particular today. But all you have to do is put that down and then just come in where you might have went outside the lines. Now, I know I heat emboss this, but sometimes when you're watercoloring, I have a tendency to still go outside the lines a little bit. So just to kind of clean up that messy look, you can definitely use the white for this. Okay, I went ahead and removed that from the board, and look at those gorgeous shades of brown I was able to achieve with just 2 liquid watercolors. Next, I want to go ahead and start finishing up the card. So I am going to grab the Love in the Hand dies, and I'm going to grab my snippers and cut these apart. Now I do want to use the word love on my card here. Once I have that die cut separated, I'm going to use the love in the middle of this artwork. Now, I think this, if I remember correctly, is called eclipse looking art, where the word or the phrase is in the pattern of what you just created. So I'll go ahead and run this through my die cut machine. And now I can go ahead and trim this down. So that's why I started with a larger piece of paper. 1, so I didn't have to worry about really centering the design. And 2, I had the area in which I can test out my paints. So this card ends up to be a 6 by 6 inch piece, or 6 by 6 card, excuse me. So I have some brown cardstock here. This is just in my scraps, because if you're going to do a 6 by 6 card, you're going to be required to use a 12 by 12 sheet of paper, obviously just cut in half. So I'm using my scoreboard here to get myself a nice crease. Now this paper is more of a lighter weight paper. It's not like 110-pound cardstock. So I will add a white panel in the center of this card. 1, to give it a little bit more stability, and 2, gives me an area in which to write my message. So look how gorgeous this looks. Just shades of brown, just shades of brown. This is like a huge unity moment for me, because I think all colors of complexion are beautiful. So when I helped design this image with Hero Arts and along with Pocono Pam, I was thrilled to see this design come to light, because I already knew how I wanted to use it. Now I did cut out the sentiment 2 more times so I can build up some layers with my words. Now you want to do this in order to have your sentiment raise up out of your design. Now you could also use foam tape, but But I find that just die cutting the sentiment a couple more times and adhering them and quote stacking them together gives me a better result compared to using the foam tape. Everything then stays at the same height and all of the image has that backing on it. So now I'll go ahead and just continue to stack all these. And then I'm going to go ahead and set them into the card panel. Again, this is where the whole like eclipse look kind of comes from, is inlaying those sentiments or those letters. I am going to use some Hero Arts glue to adhere this to the back, and I'm making sure to put in a little bit of glue in between where the letters are cut out, the thinner parts of the letters, like especially that E in between the letters. I want to make sure I get glue there so that area as well makes contact with my card base. So again, when I set in my letters, I'll be able to have that raised look. Now, if you are going to do this and you're going to use more than 3 layers, it's actually going to make the word pop up a little bit more. So more layers behind your initial design, the higher it is, it's going to stand off of your card base. Love how this looks. So now all I need to do is start inlaying the letters. So I add a little bit of glue to the back and go ahead and press that in. And now you can start to see the outline of the sentiment that I'm putting in there. You're able to see that it's kind of raised up and you're kind of figuring out what's going on. And then you realize there's a word die cut in the middle. Once I have that all done, I wanted to add some hearts. So I went right back to the color palette that I already had. I did not get rid of this. And I'm just going to add some to the scrap piece of paper that I had when I initially die cut everything out. So just add a couple of shades of brown, and this is going to allow me, one, to continue to use up some of that color, and also to have the hearts that I want to use match perfectly. So now I'm using an Infinity Hearts from Infinity Hearts from Hero Arts. That's a mouthful. And I'm going to grab just 3 of those, 3 different sizes. So I have, these are quote my embellishments that are going to be on my card. And I'm going to just place these down flat. I'm not going to die cut these several times. I'm just going to have these kind of recessed right back into the design. Now I'm just putting my placement down of where I want my hearts. And you can really see now looking over this that you can see the word love within this beautiful design. I love making cards like this, and I had not done it for quite some time. So I'm so glad I revisited this kind of inlay technique, and I'll make sure to link to a video or 2 where I've done it before, where you can see larger sentiments. Look how gorgeous that is. And now you can really see the love stand out. Now that gold embossing kind of faded back a little bit for me. So I decided to add some gold splatter to this. So this is my Fine Tech. I think this is like iridescence. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I'll be sure to link it below. And I'm just going to do some gentle flicks of gold on here. I think that's really going to stand out. So first, I'm just making sure I pick the right gold to go with what I already embossed. And then I believe this is the number 4 or number 6 brush that I'm just kind of splattering that cover or that color over. Now that I have that done, I did want to add a little bit of gold to each one of the letters. Now I'm not going to completely cover the letter. I'm just going to go along the left side of each letter and just add a little bit of gold. This to me just kind of makes the word pop a little bit more, and it also gives a nice visual interest to the design. Now you don't have to do this, or you can inlay gold letters, totally up to you. But look how pretty that is. And then you get quote like that secret little message within the design. All right, everybody, that is going to be our card for today. It is absolutely stunning, and I can't wait to do this again. All right, everybody, see you in another video soon. Here is all my social media links. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you back here soon. Bye-bye.